I feel like as of 2022, that's corny now. Nobody really cares how you number it along the way. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it depends on you. I mean, it might be motivation. You know, because sometimes the first one is the hardest one.
Oh,
you know, you gotta start and keeping it going.
Yeah.
So sometimes it might be just motivation for
Catalog.
the person, but if you doing it just because Joe Budden is doing it, then it's corny.
Then it's corny, right? All right, so I'm happy to be here.
Ditto.
With the bro.
Ditto.
Homie.
Long time.
Family. Good man. I don't know. Papido.
That's a new public moniker.
Zay.
But yeah, it's one of my names.
What other names are you having?
Mr. Little.
Mr. Little.
Isaiah. Zay Little.
What's the other joint you told me? Them Littles.
Oh yeah. That's the
you one of them Littles.
The official, unofficial collective.
Yeah. Isaiah Little. What's happening with you, family?
A lot, man. Working. Been not more busy, but different busy, smarter busy, hopefully. A whole lot of things are up. So where should we start?
A whole lot of things are up. So where should we start? That is how you should start every meeting, every team meeting, every morning. Like a whole lot of things are up. So where should we start?
Right.
I like that a lot. So I first met you the day I remember meeting you and actually having conversation with you. You were telling me about gallery retail. So you've been
more than likely.
like definitely.
If you remember for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, more than likely.
Shit. So like you've been carrying that flag, like this is not a new shit or trendy shit. You know what I'm saying? You've been carrying that flag. And you've been doing ill shit like all along.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? And most recently, I got to see you get busy on the deck for the happy hour.
Thank you.
Is it a silent happy hour? Is that the?
I think the main thing we want to underline is that it's members only.
It's a members only happy hour.
So members only is the important part. You feel me? Like the silent disco headphones is one of the tools.
This is true.
To make it exclusive,
right.
But it's definitely underscoring the members only happy hour to support our Patreon, incentivize people to subscribe to our Patreon. Gallery retails, that is.
Copy. So that's interesting because it's one of the newer. I feel like it's newer, or maybe it's just the first time that membership subscription has been also branded in and of itself, as opposed to like just being a member. Like Patreon is a thing now, and I don't know if there was a thing before Patreon that was like, you know what I'm saying? So that's interesting. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that there's probably some out there, some unofficial ones, and at least from my knowledge, I guess maybe akin to what you're saying is that I'm not aware of, especially folks locally, greater Newark, New Jersey, area, utilizing it for community arts and community programming.
Okay. Yeah.
For sure. We're using it to leverage that as well as other projects we got going on.
Yeah.
But at least locally, I'm not familiar with anybody left for those reasons.
You've always been somebody who is like in relation to me at least, always a little further along with tech and like actually using things and not just knowing about them.
Okay.
You know, like you said, nobody else is around here for art. Programming is using Patreon. People have heard of it, but you are. Would you consider yourself an early adopter in general? Or an early adopter in any particular spaces?
I mean, I think for certain things, maybe. I think in certain areas, like even Patreon, like that's not necessarily new.
Right.
But I think in some ways I might be late. Actually, because like for example, TikTok, as a millennial, I would say a true millennial, right? I haven't adopted TikTok. I mean, I definitely see the benefits for various, projects I'm working on, ways in which you can leverage that platform.
Right.
But I haven't, jumped on it just yet, so I'm definitely late in that respect. Similar to like the Instagrams of the world, where it's like I utilize it, but it's more professional than anything. So I think in some ways, either the brand, my long tooth, as far as being, not necessarily as eager as my niece to be spending as much time on these platforms. But I think definitely, try to, seek out, especially tools, that can make the work more efficient.
Yeah.
And if, I see it, as something that could do something better, faster, save some time, why not? So I definitely spent not a lot of money, but, probably a lot of time and money on, different platforms and tools to make it, more efficient, especially many times as a solo entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And, someone's trying to build a social enterprise. But I try to be.
It's bugged out to me. Like I'm mind blown right now, just over the thought of like how much of it in all of our lives, and as we grow and mature and being active with our own shit, like how much of it is our unwillingness to remain open students to just whatever is being presented in life. How much of that is grounded in the fact that there are certain things that we actually like. We know a lot of really good shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So like things have to prove themselves, because you're going up against, if we're talking about our taste in music, and it's like, yeah, I'm a fan of Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye, and like you can't debate me if you want, but these are timeless, iconic people. They're gonna talk about these people like they talk about anything else classic. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if this TikTok thing is a thing or if it's the next whatever the fuck was before. What was before TikTok? There was a thing that was before musically.
Yes, that was a thing. Yes.
Yeah, like there's always a thing before the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like we don't know if it's the thing or the thing before the thing.
Yeah. So I mean, I think at least for me, with the socials, right? I think that it's a bit of, I'm legitimately from that like era where it's kind of like between, you know what I mean? I really feel a kindred spirit to like J. Cole, for example, where it's like not that old and not that young, kind of old, you know what I mean? Where he talks about being, is this, an era where you can be a bit introspective, right? Or esoteric. I forget what he said exactly, but more or less, have a little more meaning where it's not as, straightforward sometimes, right? And I think, also the same, era where, Joel Santana, put out the epic, Tell Don't Watch Me, Watch TV. You feel me? So, a bit of it was also like not to survive almost. It's like better to not be seen, you know what I mean? And move in silence, you know what I mean? Even when you're not a gangster per se, but like move in silence. Because, to be flashy, be seen, at least where we from, greater Newark area, you know what I mean? That's not like how we came up, exactly. It's like you become a target if you're like too out there, right?
Too accessible.
And I was never that person who was like too out there, but it's also like, it's just not my style. So I think a bit of it is also just like what comes natural, as in like things to adopt, you know what I mean? And while I haven't been on, Twitter as much as I was at one point, I definitely felt, a bit of like, okay, putting words together, putting thoughts together, you know what I mean? Whereas, even with Instagram, I love the visuals. I'm a visual person, visual learner, but wasn't always like putting out the visuals of what I'm doing at that moment, what I'm doing with people that I love and care about. You know what I mean? So very often friends and family is like even earlier, especially, earlier, like now I'm getting a little bit better, but with sharing things and happenings in my life, but they were like, yeah, your Instagram's trash. It was like, yo, you do so many things, you have all these projects, you've gone to many places, and you don't really share those experiences. And sometimes I forget or don't even take a phone. You know what I mean? The capers I'm up to, it's not necessarily best to have a phone.
Right.
Or sometimes, you know, it's just
it's not about you.
Yeah, and it's like I sold the water. You know, you know what I mean? I was out, you know, football field or two out there. You know what I mean? And the show was amazing. It was like, you should have been there. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna tell you about it. Like the people who I was there with or saw or whatever may not want you to come, or hundreds of y'all to come. You know what I mean? Let alone me. You feel me? So I think that's a bit of a personal thing of like which tools I adopt. You know, which platforms. You know, I stretch myself to, because I'm definitely, even with Instagram, for example, or whatever other tool, leveraging a bunch of different things for different accounts and brands. So it's all about time as well.
I feel like everything has a certain level of validity and value, and there's a degree where it's like it depends on where, for lack of a better word, where time is going. You know what I mean? Like what this is valuable, and like, you know, the television camera was so very valuable during the 60s.
Yeah.
It's like, it's why we think of the civil rights movement the way we do. It's why people have an idea of what a hippie looks like, and what, you know what I mean, like Woodstock and that whole, you know, peace, love, you know, movement was about. Like, we have visuals for these things, and to that end, like, there's always going to be the next thing that's carrying the torch of something very essential to us. It's just that it's shrouded in a lot of what could be taken as bullshit, but it's like, but other things have access to it. Is all. So like at one point, it's like, okay, if it's news cameras, if it's television cameras we're talking about, then only television stations have them. So whatever narrative they want to spin is what the world will look like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then more people got cameras, and it was like, oh no, this wasn't the cause, this was the reaction. Because thankfully, a guy or a woman was recording that same event, but she has footage from, you know, 10 minutes earlier. You know what I mean? So it's like, just because it became more accessible to more people, then the narrative shifts.
Yeah.
It's like the use of it becomes different. Like it's because anything that's useful is manipulatable.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess maybe more so have like the same perspective, right? Where it's ultimately another tool, you know what I mean? And not just a tool for us to use, but a tool for, not to get, you know, all conspiracy theorists on it, but like folks who have more power, right, to be able to leverage those same tools. Right, because you mentioned television, you know, I mean, at one time, just the printing press was revolutionary, you know what I mean? To before that, the ability to simply read and write, you know what I mean? So, yeah, for sure, it's definitely, you know, a revolutionary time. You know what I mean? It's a ton of different reasons, you know, things going around in the world where social media, the internet, you know, algorithms and, you know, crypto are being leveraged for this and that. You know what I mean? So, you know, folks who don't have, you know, definitely need to, where possible, you know, upskill and band together to be able to leverage those tools. Because it's definitely, you know, boils down to haves and have-nots. And, you know, today, you know, it's, you know, TikTok's the wave. Today it's, you know, crypto. You know, today it's the internet and social media. And, you know, tomorrow it's who knows what. But, you know, there's still going to be, presumably, haves and have-nots. Until, you know, the have-nots learn how to work them tools a little bit better or being together.
Because, like, we're talking about the advancing of society and technology as if it's a short window, meaning our lifespan and prior, you know what I'm saying? And like, we never see beyond ourselves. But it's like, who wants to own the position in the society? Like, forget whatever we're talking about, but in the society, who really wants to wear the jacket of the grumpy old person saying, you kids are, whatever the kids are doing of the day. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were talking about that to the things that we hold dearest at one point. You know what I mean? Talked about it with how we dressed,
Mm-hmm.
talked about it with the music we listened to, talked about it with the way we interacted with each other. Like that thing transcends, any individual lifespan. You know what I mean? And all the things that I pointed to, like the TV was the idiot box, except for when Julia Child was on, and when such and such was on, and when such and such, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like everybody makes space for their own thing.
Right.
But as far as time is concerned, we're all just replaying these roles over and over and over again. It's like, don't be the role of a person you don't actually want to be in society.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out how to get that jacket off you.
Right.
Because you're being the grumpy old man when you, like that's the thing that I have to remind myself of.
Mm-hmm.
And but I say all this to say, your being able to like watch you has been a thing. It's like, yo, you can access unfamiliar shit and get familiar. Like, don't be so stuck in Windows 95.
And I think relevant to that a bit is because I think even with like a lot of the projects
Mm-hmm.
if it's not so for example First Fridays
Yeah.
you know what I mean where we aim to be a platform an institution
Mm-hmm.
that is able to sort of cross generations
Mm-hmm.
right other things and projects if they aren't with the same sort of access, for programming wise, like I'm definitely applying, lessons, sort of from my mentors, for example, right? Where at least one of them is, still kicking, still writing, still, talking his, I mean, I can curse, right?
Of course you can.
Still talking his shit, you know what I mean? And, he's 95 years old, and I think even the things that he was talking about then, the things he was talking about now, we're talking about now are very relevant. So I see the value in that tradition,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean, and exchanging of culture, you know what I mean. And I think that's one of the things we lack, you know what I mean. And I think with the opportunity, especially with places like Newark, right, where we have. While the whole area, the whole community is transitioning, we're going through a transition, a period of transition. We can, if you don't have, sort of continue to influence the culture, and or maintaining, the culture and not sort of keeping things as they were, but definitely keeping the spirits of different things, right? Because I think, for example, Philly has definitely gone through a bunch of transitions. And where it is now is, I would say, decade almost so from where I went to school initially. And I think it's definitely one of those things where like okay, it's a different place now from people when I went to school, and then people who went to school 20, 30 years before that. But there's still very, very much an essence that you can't completely erase. You know what I mean? And I think that's for a lot of reasons. That folks like myself, folks like you, many others are aiming to maintain, and I think it's going to be very helpful and even welcoming. Not just to the residents, my folks, my family, who think that I'm Mr. Downtown, as I've heard other people call their folks call them, right? Just because they be downtown, there wasn't people downtown before. But yes, that's definitely something that I think people are looking for.
Yeah. My homegirl who was here before, she asked me a question before we started the photo shoot. She was like, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing? Like, if I wasn't doing portrait photography and, lifestyle stuff and cooking and whatever the stuff I'm into that I've made like the kind of general focus of my energy and attention. Like if it wasn't that, what would it be? And I'm like, I don't have a close second to this. Like I have interests that I'm not currently, you know what I mean, giving time and energy to, but there's not like a shift that I would have to make in my life to be like, to go do this other thing I've always wanted to do. You know what I mean? Like I don't have this like secret or gnawing desire to be a airline pilot or whatever. You know what I mean?
I would ask her, give me, some more to work with. 'Cause, like, what am I like a different life, and I got different, socioeconomic, standings, you know what I mean, or like situation, or I was born into a different, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, or even just like, all right, 10 years from now, I have sort of like the things that I'm aiming to have right now, right? Like, what would I be doing different? You know what I mean? Because I think generally, that's the only, I guess, like similar to you, right? Where I can imagine myself doing something different.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, all right.
Whole new slate.
Right, like even, like you just wake up and it's like, all right, different body, whatever movie they play now where Warren Buffett's Black Son, and it's like, I can do all the shit that I want to do, and it's like, all right, now what I'm going to do?
Yeah.
Now that I don't have to worry about the things that I worry about now.
Right.
But I think it would be, in any of those situations, then it's the same day.
Yeah.
I'm not like a Trump son, but I'm like, somebody else's, able son. I can, I'll be doing bigger, more influential projects, and I think a dope challenge I was given one time was imagine what you're trying to do or what you're doing now, and how with it, whatever you're doing, you're able to impact 1 million people, right? And I think that was like something where like in the moment I was like, right? Because you generally think about like the scale of the projects that you're working on, and you're like, if for example, I'm hosting a First Fridays, and it's like a rockin', glow up party, and it's 400 people plus who purchase tickets to wear these headphones and rock out the DJs. 500 plus people outside, you know what I mean, at night.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's a lot of people, but like, how do I, with the things I'm trying to do with Newark First Fridays, impact 1 million people?
Right.
And I like begin to think about that around that time when she said this. This is back in like 2016, and I'm like, you know what I mean? You got to do a lot more. You got to have a lot more people working with you. That reach beyond the actual day of the festival has to be way beyond that. So that was an awesome challenge. You know what I mean? So I think just with, if I wasn't doing this and I was in a different part of my life, a different situation, larger, more impactful things. You know what I mean? I think in the very same vein, but still here in Jersey. Larger footprint, around the world as well.
I feel like I genuinely believe like there's nobody in the. I don't believe that there are parallel universes. Like overall, I believe everything, and I don't believe none of this shit. Okay. That's how I generally hold. Like, okay. Because like. For whatever my reasons are. But that's how I carry it, right? Like, it all matters and none of it matters. You know what I mean? Because then it's like it allows everything to be relevant and valid to whoever is relevant and valid to. But I don't have to decide who I am and what I do based on any of these other, because some other thing exists. Now I have to, I don't believe that, that that's the case. So I feel like there's no other version for us. It's like there is no past. You know what I mean?
Okay.
There's only the present.
Okay.
Right? Like, there's only what is actually in front of us. All of the other variables, that's for academia to play with. But as far as our real lives, we got to be about what's actually in front of us and what we're actually doing and being, and the habits that we're developing, and whatever our principles and priorities. Like I'm not gonna do what I do with the scenario of if I had so and so's resources. That's fiction. Like there's no value in me living through that beyond like just expanding my mind and like maybe I'm thinking small. You know what I'm saying? Like you're saying, like maybe I'm thinking small. Maybe I'm, but past that it's like, but it's still on me to do it. So I gotta, and on me to do it might mean it's on me to meet and connect with more people who can do things that I can't do and give them and like relinquish that feeling of control so that people can do a thing to their greatest ability or interest.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to do that.
Like,
Nobody's gonna swoop in any way to like.
But I think if it matters, right? Like I think very similar to what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think if it matters to you, right?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, it's pretty much. I attribute that to when I was my days in food service, or even retail, where you deal with the client or the customer in front of you, right? Before you deal with the client on the phone, right? So when you ride on a plane, you put on your mask first before you help the person next to you.
Yeah.
We're not, beyond that, there's issues going on now, in Ukraine, right? And there's other communities, entire countries around the world where they've been asking for this type of attention and support, right? Mm-hmm. So until the issue in front of us, is important, we deal with that.
Right.
But again, it's if it matters to you, right? Because you want to be whatever, you want to reach certain goals, you want to do certain things. Like there's obstacles, steps to get to that, right? If that's what you really want to do, then you got to do that. And I think I even sort of take it back a step and even lighten it up a bit. Where as an artist, I think that I attribute my engagement with social media to at least how I paraphrase Andy Warhol's approach, right? Okay. Where you put out art basically put out art when you have art to share. You know what I mean? And I think sort of how Jay-Z would put out music, where he would engage with social media as well. Where it's like, why do I have to be on social media when they take pictures of me? Right. You know what I mean? Right. And when I have art to share, when I have things that I'm working on, I share those things. And I think that especially with the audience I'm trying to develop, engage with, the following for the efforts we put forth. Some of them will be on social media. A lot of them will see it on social media. Some people will read the things you put on social media. So you definitely got to be, in 6 or more places, you know what I mean, to even reach those people. But I think definitely with the way that, we're trying to grow these different projects and initiatives, the internet, the socials isn't the only way.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. Do you ever think about like why do you do the things that you do today? Like the things that have the priority for your time and your energy today, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what were the bullet points in life, or the bullet points in the timeline, where it's like, this thing connects to this thing, connects to this thing, connects to Newark First Fridays?
Oh man, I mean, I think there has been a ton of things. I think there's been a ton of things, and if I was to go in any chronological order, I think one that jumps out is especially being the youngest of 5. Mm-hmm. Them littles, right? Is definitely our official moniker for my siblings and I. Right. Plus bigger family, right? And then I have a big family from like the Littles and the Barneses, the Marshall family, right? Yeah. So it's a bunch of my family, and as I say in my bio, I'm definitely a son of the city, right? Mm-hmm. Where part of my family has come from folks who've been in New Jersey literally since like the late 1700s to the other side, that very black story coming up in the late 50s, through chain migration and slums to interact and meet in Scudder Home Projects. You feel me? So very much Newark kid, born in Newark and East Orange. So I think that like at least those things was very much like, oh, I'm from here. Like being able to be privileged enough to see, other places, nearby Philly, other places around the world.
And you travel well, relatively.
I have, as a person who tries to travel, I would say that I'm not as traveled as I would like. But to my family, they say that I'm a vagabond, a nomad. You know what I mean? So I definitely embrace that, title for my family, and try to live up to it, because I think while I'm traveling and on my capers, I try to pick up things as I'm translating how other people do things, right? To how and what we can, adopt here in Newark, in the greater Newark area, which is what I refer to Newark, right? Yeah. But I mean, I think early on, I don't know where I got this from, but I was definitely an entrepreneur early. So in applying my creativity, my art to entrepreneurship very early. So I think the earliest, adaptation of or interpretation of gallery retail for me, which really means, fusing art and retail, is me, my mom going down to Newark Public Library. This woman, forget her name at this point, but she was teaching kids in different groups how to do origami. So I'm like, oh, this is lit. So I was doing this, and I stayed with her. Like, mind you, she done went through like 3-4 different demos, and I'm just hanging out with her. So she like, all right, you just stay here on the side, right? So she, then gave me some like advanced shit, some things out of her bag. You feel me? So she, like, my mom, like, all right, she done walked around and left me here with this random stranger, but I'm there like really getting into this origami. I done did like 12 different, animals by this point. So nothing of the other Kwanzaa celebration, right? So she sent me, paper, special paper. She's like, I'm gonna send them something, books. Of course, around this time, what did I do? I turned these animals into like, Pokemon. And colored them and took them to school, and I started selling them to my classmates. So the hustle was real very early on. So this had to have been like at least 2nd or 3rd grade. So I think that was my earliest, applying that to that hustle. And I think another one that jumped out at me that I played back in my head many times was my lemonade stand on Myrtle. You feel me? In Irvington, right outside my mom's, job at the time, the daycare that probably half my family didn't work that, right? But so early on, literally hustling. I'm talking about like $1, $2 for a yellow Pikachu. I flipped the frog and flipped his ears up. He was a Pikachu. $2. That's pure profit. I'm getting the paper and the markers from school. Pure profit. So entrepreneurship was Temple way later on, when I was like, spend $0. I make $2. I'm coming up. Like my mom already gave me bus fare. Right. So I'm going to the store. I'm up. I'm killing them at the chicken shack. So by the time I got to high school, by the time I got to college, like entrepreneurship was. I knew that's what I was doing. So I think that those different things, sort of led to taking on entrepreneurship, at Temple, which was a burgeoning, class, focus at Temple at that time. And then just being exposed to Philly, which was like going through its transition. Then, and being an hour and a half from home, which is far enough but close enough. It was a recipe for, all that I'm doing now.
When I think about like the way you introduced me to Philadelphia, like I'd been to Philadelphia, spent time in Philadelphia before. I know and have known people in Philadelphia, but first time I spent a night in Philadelphia was because of you being with you, right? And you did a kickback, and you were telling me about the First Fridays idea, like the platform of a First Fridays, and
that was 2015.
Yeah. So like, for the person that you are, right? Experiential hospitality is like, I would say, a benchmark for you of like how resources can be effectively and sustainably distributed. You know what I mean? Like you know the feeling that you have, the connection that you have with Philadelphia as a place. You know what I mean? Because of not just the cool shit that there is to do, but there was a platform in place wherein it's like we all want to be outside. That's number one. Right. All right. So we have that in common. Right. We can get down to like the subcultures and whatnot after that. Some of us just want to be outside. Some of us want to be outside and we want to be around music. or someone's going to be around visuals, or someone's going to be around people or whatever. And there are things to do throughout the night of a First Fridays that you can find what you like.
Mm-hmm.
Just come outside.
Right.
We'll do the best we can to take care of the rest.
Right.
We'll come outside. That's
Right.
all, right? And so, like, what you're bringing here is a thing that, in my opinion, hadn't existed in my lifetime of, like, that type of platform, that experiential platform being developed.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, institutions have tried it. I wouldn't say that it hasn't been attempted.
Mm-hmm.
But I say this all the time, like, City Hall anywhere, whoever is in that building has a temporary job.
Right.
Like, if you want something to really, really take foot,
Mm-hmm.
don't leave it up to whoever's in your City Hall to make that thing happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they don't have the bandwidth to do that.
Right.
But you can, and unless you plan on not being here, then you're gonna be here anyway. So build it.
And I got, like, I guess at least thank you. One, and I think I got two things immediately that jump out at me with that, because I think the role in any city hall, let's say, hopefully, is temporary, right? Because there's, in general, like, some people, just keeping their job going, and I'm not talking about locally, but, in
Just
the world, people are like, I want to be, the czar forever, let's do that.
Yeah.
But in general, right, you want, there to be new ideas, but,
Right.
To kind of, with the role, I think that city halls can help, create or enable or instigate the environment, for certain things to be able to happen, for certain things certain industries to be stirred, right? But I think in most situations, there isn't necessarily the need for a Newark First Fridays like thing, because the environment is at least set enough where the things, the spaces, the culture can survive or maintain or thrive, right? Because I think in many situations, right, scenes in other cities has ebbed and flowed, right? But there are certain, opportunities or times where they're able to, like, really thrive because the timing and the people have come, right? And I think, in certain other, communities, right, the laws, the policies, the infrastructure, isn't able to, like, let's say, bolster that, you know what I mean? So I think that that's an important role in city halls. And many situations, right, people don't go to San Francisco because of their mayor being all that cool. You know what I mean? They don't go to Germany or Berlin because the mayor's popping. You probably go, or you went all the way out there for a festival for the music scene, right? And then you probably walk past the statue, didn't realize that was the mayor. Right. So I think that that's a thing. But to kind of come back to, like, the culture part, I think there isn't also the need all the time for a Newark First Fridays like thing, because it was already enough people, enough activators, enough not influencers,
right here,
event producers. I would say at the time that I wasn't alive, exactly. But I think even when I was running around to different places, holes in the walls, sometimes an event hall, there was parties and there were street teams and there were DJs, multiple DJs activating the greater area. So, like, I guess you could say the younger days of Jersey Club, right? But even before that, my family would tell me about the different dance clubs. Like, Newark was, like, the spot for house. Like, my mom is in a book where they're documenting Zanzibar, and on multiple pages, Michael Jackson is in the show. You know what I mean? And there's a tiger on the page. You feel me? So, like, there was a time where, like, you didn't need the Newark First Fridays. The scene was rocking enough where people just knew where the things were, and there was enough things to to get into. And I'm pretty sure the beginnings of First Fridays in Philly was supported by different parties to get college students, probably especially, to different safe-ish parts of the town to one, have a place where they can go safely, reduce the amount of let's just say problems, you know, and then also help, you know, local business at the same time. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, people use these types of initiatives for various reasons. Sometimes they're not really necessary, and then sometimes, you know, they can be very helpful for specific corridors, specific areas, or hopefully in our situation, the greater Newark area.
Yeah.